Yeah, look at some of the summer signings there. It was one of the most expensive and exciting windows of all time, but we're 11 Premier League games in. Mark, who, if anyone, has truly lived up to their expectations? Because they're pretty big expectations with the kind of money involved.
Well, like we say, £3 billion spent, and every single football fan is crying out for their club. Sign some players, spend some money, bring in some new faces. We're desperate to see it. And clubs sometimes are reluctant to go into the window, go into Europe to sign players that don't fit the bill. Because if you get it wrong, it can be an expensive mistake. And that's where clubs don't want to be, looking back and regretting potential transfer targets that they brought into the club for big money, because it can completely affect the way things happen moving forward. It can affect the dynamic of the team, their league position and the pressure on the manager. So try and get the recruitment right. The other thing to point out, Joe, is when do you judge a new signing? Is it after 11 Premier League games, or do you need to give them 12 months, 18 months? And a lot of sporting directors and managers will say, look, we want the players to get off to the most fantastic start, but it's not always possible. Here is the first 8 of the biggest signings this summer in the Premier League. I know you can see a lot of Liverpool, Manchester United, the big clubs that have made big investments in players. And straight away, how many of those do you say have made the impact that the fans, the head coaches and the sporting directors would have hoped for?
Yeah, because I'm constantly hearing about these 3 Liverpool players in particular. We're hearing about this Isak Ekitike conundrum. We're hearing about Wirtz and that price tag and whether or not he's going to be a bit of a dud or not. That's consistently what we're hearing.
You'd probably say Hugo Ekitike is the one signing that's had an impact and is working. 6 goals in all competitions. Remember, he started the season with 3 and 3 for Liverpool. Looked like the real deal. Alexander Isak, on the other hand, no Premier League goals, just the one in the League Cup. And obviously, when he turned up at Anfield, he wasn't quite fit because of what had happened over the course of the summer. Nick Woltemade, I think he's had a really good impact with his goals, but his performances need to be better. And Newcastle fans can see already the type of player he can be. There's a connection there. So you'd say that his impact has been good. The same with Mbeumo, 5 goals in the Premier League with 1 assist. Benjamin Sesko not quite hit the ground running. Gyökeres, again, are you judging him on goals? Or are you judging him on what he does to pull defenders around, to work the channels, to be a physical presence? So you look at these straight away and you think, there's a few that are working, there's a few that are not working. And again, this is the next 8 out of the top 16 biggest spends in the Premier League. And again, you look at these players and you're thinking, some of them are working, some of them are not, and some of them you probably need to give a little bit more time before you make a judgment. But again, this is big money. You know, 60, 50 million pounds. An average player this summer was going to cost you at least 50 million pounds. You know, that was where the market was. And if you wanted a top player, you were going to have to spend over 100. It turns out that actually spending over 100 didn't guarantee that you were going to get a top player that was ready to operate straight away. I think maybe João Pedro has had a really good impact. 7 goals and assists in the Premier League for Chelsea this season. So I think that would suggest he's been a good signing at this stage. Anthony Elanga hasn't hit the ground running. We know that Johan Wissa is injured as well, which is a little bit of a problem. The same with Noni Madueke. I watched Jamie Gittings play against Wolves in the League Cup a couple of weeks ago. Looked sensational for Chelsea. The problem is, Premier League, 0 goals, 0 assists. Not got as much game time as he'd like. The same with Xavi Simons as well at Spurs. And just a couple of other potential players to look at. And these are the biggest signings for Everton, Nottingham Forest and Fulham. And straight away, Amari Hutchinson there in the middle for Nottingham Forest. I loved him at Ipswich, watched him in the Championship. I thought he was sensational for Kieran McKenna. Not worked so far at Nottingham Forest. He hasn't had a single Premier League start. Tyler Dibbling from Southampton. Again, we know that Jack Grealish has been brilliant. So therefore, his impact in the team has not been as great because he's had to get past a really talented, experienced player in Jack Grealish. But again, at Everton, that one's not quite worked out. The same with Kevin at Fulham. Their record signing, they were hoping he'd have an impact from Shakhtar Donetsk. As of now, 2 Premier League starts, no goals, no assists. So fans, wait, be patient, and just desperately hoping your club go out and spend money is not always the right thing to do.
Now, despite a badly bruised foot, is Marc Guehi, and whether he leaves Crystal Palace in January or in the summer, it will be a big talking point. Mark McAdam, then, just bring us up to speed with this Guehi situation.
Yeah, he's been fantastic, hasn't he, for Crystal Palace over the years. A key figure in all of their success. And what a guy off the pitch as well, which I think is attracting a lot of interest because of the way he's handled himself in this situation. We know that he had a potential move to Liverpool on deadline day that ended up not happening. The summer before that, there were 4 rejected bids from Newcastle in their pursuit of Marc Guehi. That one didn't happen. And with all this noise and speculation, he's just continued to do what he does well, and that's be at the heart of that Crystal Palace defence. Personally, Marc Guehi, his representatives, his dad, who's heavily involved with what he does in his career, are all relaxed on the situation at the moment. They're obviously speaking to possible candidates. We know that on January the 1st, he can sign a pre-contract agreement with a side outside of the Premier League, which means the Bundesliga, means La Liga, means Serie A. So he potentially is just a matter of days away now from signing something with someone else. We know that Liverpool still retain an interest in Marc Guehi, and centre-back is a position that they're looking at, whether it's in January or for next summer, because Ibrahima Konate is another player that's going into the last year of his deal at Liverpool. And in October, Oliver Glasner said Marc Guehi has told the club that he's not willing to sign a new contract. He wants to see what options are out there. He wants to look at the next chapter, and he doesn't believe right now that is with Crystal Palace. So there's been quite an open transparency from Palace, from Marc Guehi, from his representatives, and there's a respect there because of the way he's handled himself and the way he's operated despite all of this interest. We know, because we spoke about it on the transfer shows last month, that there is an interest from Bayern Munich, who are in the market for a centre-back as well. So that is definitely one to keep an eye on. But there will be queues around the block and back again for this man, particularly if he's a free in the summer.
Yeah, you mentioned Bayern, and we quite often see a bit of a knock-on effect depending on what's going on at other clubs, because they've got their own issues to resolve with an out-of-contract centre-back, don't they? What's going on? Yeah,
Dayot Upamecano, 27 years old, going into the last year of his contract now. He's a free in the summer. Again, hugely experienced as well. He's been at Bayern Munich, so he brings that gravitas of playing for a big club. He understands the pressures that come with that. So again, the Liverpools, the Real Madrids, those types of clubs will all be looking at a player of that quality that potentially could be available on a free transfer as well, which means if, for example, Upamecano leaves Bayern Munich, they're going to be in the market for a centre-back, which could mean this man. So yeah, transfer dominoes with regards to centre-backs. Be interesting to see what happens. I mentioned Konate at Liverpool. He's another one that could fall into that situation as well.
Yeah, we know that a lot can change between now and January the 1st, of course, but what is happening behind the scenes right now? Bring us up to speed with the main headlines.
Well, it depends what football club you're in, will depend on where you're at with regards to your January transfer window plans. I know people are saying transfer show, 51 days away until the window opens. So clubs right now will be working behind the scenes on potentially what they may need to do in January. I think one of the things that's important to point out was that this summer was a record-breaking summer for Premier League sides. Over £3 billion spent. I know some people are still recovering because of the intensity of the summer. It was 3 months of full non-stop action where players were moving left, right and centre. There was a lot of intensity on the situation. There was a spotlight on some of the big deals that were done. Some of the biggest clubs in the Premier League were all active, spending in excess of £200 million each. There was a lot of movement between Premier League sides and, of course, players coming over from Europe as well. It was incredibly frenetic for the most part, and a lot of agents, sporting directors, chief execs and people that were at the heart of these big transfers found it a really difficult window to work in. So yeah, one to keep an eye on in terms of moving forward, because I think that will have a knock-on effect to January. There will not be as much money spent. There will be not as great a need to try and recruit. And as we'll talk about over the next half an hour, it doesn't always mean if you go out and spend money that you're actually going to go and get the right player that's the right fit for your club right now. So there needs to be a little bit of a patience with regards to, is this the right move in January? A sporting director I spoke to this morning said, this is a really tough window to operate in. There's not much value for money. It's really difficult. Clubs drive up their prices. Players can get a little bit of an agitation to be in a team and wanting to play, and you can't always guarantee that when you make the move. And I guess there's probably different reasons as to why this could be a really busy or actually quite a quiet window.
Yeah, because I mean, you've kind of summed it up there. We do often hear that clubs plan windows far in advance, but in general, how do teams feel about January and how do they use it?
The first reason, because you're in trouble. You're in the bottom of the Premier League and you're flirting with potentially losing £200 million by getting relegated to the Championship. There will be teams at the sharp end of the Premier League table that want to win the title, want to get into the Champions League, which can be worth between 70 and 80 million pounds next season. And they will be looking, do we need that one extra player? Do we need to make sure that we are absolutely watertight with regards to the squad we feel can get us over the line? The other thing that could be a big factor in January is injuries. If you've got 2 or 3 injuries to key players in key positions, you will use this window, if possible, to go and make sure you get those players to fill in those blanks, because that could be crucial as well. The other thing that could be another factor is a target that you've been looking at for some time becomes available. Luis Diaz to Liverpool. That was a summer target that a few years ago they were able to action in January because the price was right. So it will be different depending on what club you are. But everyone will be looking at this window in a different way, whether it's because they need to do something because of their Premier League position or to get over the line, or because they've got injuries.
Yeah, lots to talk about this lunchtime. We're going to talk about Manchester United now, because 11 games in, United are 7th, ahead of Liverpool and a point off the top 4. But will they look to strengthen? Well, Rob Dorset joins us from England's training camp at Tottenham's training ground now. Rob, a very good afternoon to you. So are United content with their squad right now?
Yes, I think they pretty much are content with the squad, and so is Ruben Amorim as well. Now, look, the impression I get is that Amorim would like to strengthen because, of course, you've got Benjamin Sesko, who's got an injury problem that we gave some more detail on yesterday on Sky Sports News. He's expected to be out until after the international break, several weeks, but they're monitoring him. And, of course, they're going to lose Brian Mbeumo and Amad Diallo to the African Cup of Nations in about a month's time as well. So I think Amorim would like to strengthen, but the reality is United are not looking to strengthen in January. They're pretty content, very content, in fact, with the business they did in the summer. And if anything, that they may consider 1 or 2 outgoings, depending on who comes in. And the 2 obvious candidates there are Joshua Zirkzee and Kobbie Mainoo, both of who have had very limited game time this season under Ruben Amorim. And we know that, of course, there's no desire from Manchester United to sell either of those. But if a serious offer came in, I think United would have to consider it. They are not out of the woods when it comes to PSR, but their entire focus, I think, in terms of incomings will be in the summer, when the absolute priority will be a central defensive midfield player, a number 6, if you like. And it's been made pretty clear to me that United aren't really able or planning to spend the big bucks on the sort of players they're interested there in January. They're going to keep their powder dry until the summer. And the names they're interested in are some of the stellar names that a lot of other elite clubs in the Premier League and in Europe are considering right now, with Elliot Anderson, Adam Wharton and Carlos Saliba at Brighton as well. Big money for any of those, and United aren't planning to spend big money in January, as far as I've been told.
Talk to us a bit more about these outgoings, Rob, because you mentioned Kobbie Mainoo, of course, a man that would love to be involved in the setup behind you. Where do we think things are with him? And do players think about the impact a move can potentially have on their future in an England squad?
Absolutely they do, and it's an extraordinary situation for Kobbie Mainoo. Don't forget, it was only last summer that he was starting a European Championship final for England in the stadium in Berlin, Stadium, and it was an extraordinary moment for him. He was very much part of the England first choice starting 11 under the back end of Gareth Southgate. And Southgate had looked at a lot of options, hadn't he, in that time? And so I think it's been a shock to Kobbie Mainoo that he's gone from that to have to remember that the kind of understudy role for Harry Kane is still up for grabs, as far as I'm aware. Ollie Watkins is the favourite for that position at the moment, but hasn't made it his own by any means. He's struggling this season with a bit of an injury, only scored 1 Premier League goal. Thomas Tuchel left him out of this squad, which was a surprise, saying that he's nursing an injury, and yet he played 81 minutes for Aston Villa over the weekend. When it comes to Tony, I think he's got to score goals, and if he could get a move back to the Premier League, that would only enhance his chances of getting back into Thomas Tuchel's squad and have a chance for the World Cup. We've just got some breaking news, I suppose, for you in terms of, well, not breaking news, but it's a line that I've been working on this morning that a couple of colleagues have been working on with us as well, and it involves Miles Lewis-Skelly, who is another player not here in this England squad right now. My understanding is that Thomas Tuchel has told him that he needs to be playing more football if he's going to be a candidate for that World Cup squad next summer. And at the moment, he isn't playing enough for Arsenal, plain and simple. And we know that there are a number of Premier League clubs monitoring his situation at Arsenal right now. Arsenal have no desire to sell. You have to remember, from an Arsenal perspective, they are competing still on 4 fronts when it comes to trophies. Their squad is stretched a little bit at the moment because of 1 or 2 injury problems. And so Miles Lewis-Skelly will get minutes for Arsenal going forward. And he has, of course, just signed recently a new 5-year contract. But if you take all of that aside, the reality is that Miles Lewis-Skelly right now is probably Arsenal's 3rd choice left-back behind Calafiore and Nkapie. And that is not a good place for him to be with his England prospects in mind. That's why Thomas Tuchel has said to him, you need to be more than just a good tourist, was the exact phrase that he'd used when he was talking about Miles Lewis-Skelly. And if Arsenal were to consider selling him, of course, another academy graduate where 100% of his transfer fee would go as profit in their PSR accounts. So that will appeal to Arsenal in the long term, but Mikel Arteta sees him as a very important player. He's not his first choice in the Premier League right now, but still very much an important part of the squad. Again, would be really interesting to see in January if a Premier League club or a European club came in with a big offer for Miles Lewis-Skelly. Would Arsenal entertain that? They're certainly not encouraging any offers like that right now. And we shouldn't forget he's only 19 years old and his development is still on an upward trend. But yeah, Miles Lewis-Skelly, one to watch, I think, in January and see if there is any appetite from clubs coming in for him.
OK, Rob, for now, thank you very much.